The night was still in Washington, D.C., broken only by the steady hum of machinery. Deep below the city, in the restricted zone of a new metro extension project, a construction crew drilled into ancient bedrock. The foreman, Jack Hensley, leaned against a railing, sipping stale coffee, when the drill's sound shifted from a grinding roar to a metallic screech. Jack frowned. Rock didn't sound like that. "Kill it," he barked. Sparks showered from the drill bit as it chewed into something solid, something smooth. When the machine powered down, the crew gathered, confused. The rock face they expected wasn't there anymore. Instead, a dark, seamless surface gleamed faintly under the floodlights. "What the hell is that?" One worker muttered, reaching out to touch it. Jack slapped his hand away. "Don't. This is government property now." But before he could radio in, the surface responded. With a low hum, the black metal pulsed once, like a heartbeat. The men stumbled back, eyes wide. For a moment, the cavern smelled faintly of ozone, as if lightning had just struck. The foreman's instincts screamed at him to seal off the site. But curiosity kept them frozen. Then came the sound, a whisper. Not in English, not in any human tongue, but a layered resonance like a chorus speaking from inside their skulls. It was soft, almost pleading, and it made the hairs on their necks rise. One of the workers dropped his helmet. The clatter echoed through the chamber. Then the whisper stopped. Silence pressed in, heavy and unnatural. Jack finally snapped out of it. He radioed the surface. "Shut it down. Seal the shaft, now." His voice shook despite his effort to sound calm. But it was too late. The black surface rippled like liquid metal disturbed by a stone. Lines of light raced across it, carving out patterns too complex to follow. And then a shape emerged. It wasn't a door, not exactly. It was more like the metal remembered how to open. A fracture spread across the surface, glowing faintly. Cold air rushed out, laced with something that smelled like dust and iron. Behind the cracked darkness, a hollow vastness. Jack swore under his breath. "We're not supposed to see this." That was when the first man disappeared. It happened too fast. One of the younger workers, drawn by some unseen pull, stepped closer despite Jack's warning. He leaned toward the opening as if hypnotized, and in a blink, the darkness swallowed him. No Skringle. Just gone. The rest of the crew panicked. Tools clattered, shouts filled the cavern, men scrambled for the ladders. Jack grabbed the nearest worker by the vest, dragging him back. "Nobody goes near that thing." But even as he shouted, the crack sealed itself. The glowing lines faded, the heartbeat hum fell silent, and once again it was just a black wall of impossible metal. No sign of the vanished man. No proof he had ever been there at all. The floodlights flickered, then steadied. Jack felt the weight of eyes on him, though no one was there. The silence was worse than the whispers. Minutes later, armed security arrived. Men in dark uniforms with no insignia shoved the workers aside, barking orders. Jack tried to explain what had happened, but the officers weren't listening. They confiscated radios, phones, even the workers' helmets with built-in cameras. Every scrap of evidence was taken. "You didn't see anything," one officer said coldly. Jack opened his mouth to argue, but the look in the man's eyes shut him up. By dawn, the entire site was sealed under heavy lockdown. Trucks rolled in, carrying equipment that looked military, not construction. Workers were dismissed, paid off, and warned to forget. But Jack knew better. You don't just forget something like that. He couldn't stop thinking about the way the surface had pulsed. Alive, almost aware. He couldn't forget the whisper that crawled inside his mind. And most of all, he couldn't forget the missing man. Erased without a trace, above ground, Washington carried on as if nothing had happened. Tourists took photos at the Capitol. Cars clogged Constitution Avenue. The city breathed oblivious. But beneath the streets, deep in the earth where no one was supposed to look, something alien had stirred. Something that had been buried for centuries, maybe longer. And it was no longer content to stay hidden. 3 days after the incident, Washington looked the same on the surface. Politicians argued in marble halls, tourists shuffled through museums, and school buses rattled past the White House gates. But beneath the polished facade, whispers were already spreading. A story this big couldn't be buried forever. Clara Evans was sitting at her desk in a cramped newsroom when the email arrived. She almost deleted it. The subject line looked like spam. "They're lying to you. Look beneath DC." But curiosity got the better of her. She clicked. What she saw made her heart pound. Attached were 3 grainy photos, a cavern deep underground, a black metallic wall smooth as glass covered in glowing lines, and worst of all, an empty heart lying on the ground beside an open crack in the surface. Beneath the photos was a single sentence. One of us didn't come back. Clara's first instinct was skepticism. Hoaxes came through every week, but these photos were different. They weren't staged, not with this much detail. The lighting, the dust, the look of panic frozen on the workers' faces in the background. It felt real. Too real. Before she could forward the email to her editor, her phone buzzed. A restricted number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A low voice came through. "You have the photos." Clara froze. "Who is this?" "Someone who doesn't want to end up like the others. They're covering it up. A tunnel crew hit something under the city. Something they can't explain. They locked it down. People disappeared. I was there." Her throat went dry. "You're saying this is real? You didn't get those pictures by accident." The voice said sharply. "You think it's a hoax? Look at the metadata. They were taken underground, timestamped 3 nights ago, and I won't be able to call again." The line went dead. Clara stared at her screen, torn. If she brought this to her editor without proof, she'd be laughed out of the room. But if it was real, if something truly alien was buried under Washington, this was the story of the century. That night, Clara sat in her apartment, blinds drawn, laptop glowing in the dark. She traced the email's origin through several dead-end servers before landing on a location, a diner just outside the city. Someone had used its free Wi-Fi to send the files. It was reckless, dangerous, exactly the kind of thing she lived for. The next morning she went there. The diner was ordinary, clinking coffee mugs, sizzling bacon, the smell of grease, but Clara felt eyes on her. She slid into a booth, ordered black coffee, and waited. A man in a hard hat sat 2 tables over. His face was haggard, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before he dropped his gaze. He finished his coffee, left a few bills on the table, and slipped outside. Clara's gut told her to follow. She tossed money onto her table and hurried after him. He was waiting in the alley, trembling as he lit a cigarette. "You shouldn't be here," he said without looking up. "You sent the photos." He exhaled smoke. "They'll kill me if they find out." "Who's they?" Clara pressed. "The ones running the site, military, black ops, no insignias. They took everything. Phones, helmets, even the damn drill footage. They don't want anyone to know what we hit." His hands shook. "But it's alive. Whatever's down there, it's not a rock, it's not debris. It breathes." The Clara's pen hovered over her notepad. "Breathes." The man's eyes darted nervously. "We lost a guy. Just gone. Swallowed up. I can't explain it. 1 second he was there. The next, he stopped, shivering. You ever hear metal whisper to you? Because I did. I still do at night." Before Clara could ask more, a black SUV turned into the alley. The man's face drained of color. "They found me." The SUV doors opened. Men in suits stepped out, moving fast. The worker shoved a folded slip of paper into Clara's hand. "Run." She bolted, heart hammering, weaving through pedestrians until she lost sight of the alley. Only then did she open the paper. It was an address, a government facility just outside the city. Scribbled beneath it were 3 words: "At once out." The facility wasn't on any official map. It was buried beneath the Potomac's edge, masked as a water treatment plant. To outsiders, it looked like industrial concrete, pipes, and fences. To insiders, it was the staging ground for something far stranger. Colonel Richard Hale stood before a line of military scientists in hazard suits. His jaw was clenched, his tone clipped, betraying the pressure from higher up. "Your orders are simple: go in, document, extract. No improvisation, no heroics. If it moves, you report it. If it speaks, you record it. You don't engage." "Understood." The team nodded, though unease rippled through them. This wasn't the first classified mission they'd seen. But the footage they'd been shown, the pulsing metal, the vanishing worker, wasn't something you could shrug off. Dr. Lena Carter adjusted the seal on her helmet. She was a linguist brought in last minute, told only that unidentified symbols had been found. She had a gnawing suspicion this was far bigger than just archaeology. The descent was slow, carried out in a reinforced elevator shaft built in secret over the past 72 hours. Soldiers flanked the scientists, rifles primed. As the cage rattled downward, the hum started. Faint at first, a vibration more than a sound, like the deep growl of a sleeping animal. When the doors opened, the cavern lay before them, impossibly vast, lit by towers of floodlights. And there it was, the ship. It loomed in the chamber, a curved expanse of black alloy that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. The surface seemed liquid, shifting subtly as if it was aware of their arrival. Even Hale, hardened by decades of service, felt his breath catch. "Form up," he barked, covering his unease with command. The team approached slowly. Dr. Carter's eyes widened as she noticed faint patterns racing across the surface, fractals that rearranged themselves too quickly to sketch. "It's language," she whispered. Hale gave her a sharp look. "You can read that." "Not yet, but it's structured. Intentional. It's alive." The lead engineer, Dr. Suresh, knelt and set down a scanner. The device hummed, lights flickering wildly as if overwhelmed. "This isn't any known element. No corrosion, no seams. It's not manufactured the way we build machines. It's grown." Suddenly, the wall in front of them shivered. A ripple spread across the surface, and the same fracture Jack's crew had witnessed appeared. It unfolded silently, forming a narrow entrance. The soldiers tightened their grips on their rifles. Hale's voice was steady but tense. "Team 1 with me. Carter, Suresh, you're up front. We're going in." They stepped across the threshold. Inside, the air was colder, heavy with static. The walls glowed faintly, lighting the path without lamps. The material pulsed softly, like veins under skin. Every step echoed too loudly, as if the ship was amplifying their presence. Dr. Carter brushed her gloved hand against a wall. Instantly, glowing glyphs flared under her touch. The symbols spiraled outward, rearranging themselves into new patterns. She stumbled back, heart racing. "It's responding to me. Keep moving," Hale ordered, though even he looked shaken. The corridor opened into a chamber the size of a cathedral. At its center was a column of shifting light, suspended in midair. It rotated slowly, beams refracting into patterns that no human eye could fully follow. Dr. Suresh raised his scanner again, voice trembling. "This isn't a power source, it's memory, data. Billions of terabytes compressed into living code." Carter stepped closer, mesmerized. "He's trying to communicate." "Look," the light shifted, forming images. Flickers of stars, planets, battles fought in space. Hulking shapes that were neither human nor machine. Cities collapsing. A war that stretched across galaxies. The soldiers gasped. Hale's grip tightened on his sidearm. "Shut it down." "Pull the plug." "There is no plug," Suresh shouted. "It's not a machine we control. It's controlling itself." Then the whisper returned. This time it wasn't faint. It filled the chamber, vibrating through their bones, bypassing ears and slamming directly into their thoughts. Not words, impressions, images. A planet burning, a fleet descending. A single phrase repeated again and again. "You are not ready." One soldier dropped his rifle, clutching his helmet. Blood streamed from his nose. Another screamed, firing wildly into the walls. The bullets vanished into the black surface without a trace, absorbed like water into sand. "Fall back," Hale roared, dragging Carter away from the light. But as they stumbled toward the exit, the ship reacted. The walls shifted, closing, sealing off the path they had entered through. The vessel wasn't letting them go. Not yet. The chamber pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't sound but sensation. Each throb rattled inside their chests, sensing with their heartbeats until it felt like the ship itself was breathing through them. Colonel Hale barked orders, forcing his men into formation, but discipline was already unraveling. One soldier, Private Mills, stood perfectly still, his rifle slack in his hands, eyes unfocused. His lips moved silently as though repeating words no one else could hear. "Private!" Hale snapped, shoving him. Mills blinked, but instead of snapping to attention, he smiled faintly. It wasn't a human smile. It was too calm, too certain. "They don't mean us harm," Mills murmured. His voice was different, layered, like two people speaking at once. Dr. Carter froze. He's repeating the whisper. Before Hale could respond, Mills lifted his rifle, not at the walls, but at his own squad. Chaos erupted. Soldiers shouted, ducking behind their gear. Hale lunged, knocking the barrel aside as the rifle fired, the bullet sizzling uselessly into the living wall. Two men tackled Mills to the ground, wrestling the weapon away. He didn't resist. He just laughed. "You don't understand. It's not an invasion. It's a return." Carter's stomach twisted. His words echoed the flashes she had seen in the light. Cities burning, fleets descending. Not an invasion, a continuation. Dr. Suresh's scanner beeped wildly, its screen flooding with incomprehensible data. "Colonel, the ship is interfacing with him. His brainwaves are spiking like he's part of the system now." The Hale cursed under his breath. "Carter, talk to me. What the hell does it want?" She swallowed hard, staring at the glyphs crawling along the chamber walls. "It's trying to communicate, but it's not using language the way we do. It's downloading into him. Using him as a translator. The thought made her shiver. The light column shifted again. New images poured out Earth itself, glowing like a beacon against the void. But around it loomed shadows, structures, ships, colossal things blotting out stars. And then unmistakably the White House, its roof torn open, fire consuming the Capitol. It's showing us the future, Carter whispered. No, Mills hissed, struggling against his restraints, eyes wide with manic devotion. Not the future. The past, the war is already here, buried beneath your feet. The chamber darkened. The glowing glyphs dimmed, then reformed into a single, repeating pattern. It was almost like coordinates. Dr. Suresh leaned in, horrified. Colonel, it's transmitting. Not to us. To space! Kill it! Hale barked. He raised his weapon and fired into the light column. The beam scattered, refracting bullets like drops of water. The sound that followed wasn't mechanical. It was a scream. Not from Mills, not from the team, but from the ship itself. The floor shuddered. Sections of the wall peeled back, opening into new corridors that stretched endlessly into darkness. The ship wasn't just alive, it was waking up. Emergency alarms blared in their helmets. Command was trying to recall them, but the exits were sealed, the shaft above collapsed by shifting metal. They were trapped. Mills began chanting, words spilling in a language no one knew but everyone somehow understood. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were commands. A call to kneel, to submit, to accept the return. Hale silenced him with a blow to the helmet, knocking him unconscious. But the damage was done. The voices lingered in all of them, a low murmur at the back of the mind. Carter gripped Hale's arm, her eyes wide with fear. Colonel, it's not just a ship, it's a transmitter. A beacon. Something's coming, and it knows we're here. Hale steadied himself, jaw set. Then we shut it down, whatever it takes. But even as he said it, the chamber floor split open. The column of light sank downward, revealing something beneath. Machinery. Engines. No. It was an enormous chamber filled with rows upon rows of dark glass like pods. Each one faintly glowed with a pale, flickering light. Dr. Suresh's voice cracked. Oh my God, those aren't machines. The pods shifted. Inside them were shapes, tall, skeletal forms with elongated skulls and clawed hands folded against their chests. Thousands of them, all sleeping, all waiting. The ship hadn't been buried to be hidden. It had been buried to keep them contained. And now it was opening the cages. President Elizabeth Monroe had weathered crises before. Terror attacks, economic collapses, cyber warfare that nearly blacked out half the country. But nothing prepared her for the images flickering on the secure briefing room screen. The feed from the subterranean cameras was shaky, distorted by interference but clear enough to show what her generals could barely bring themselves to explain. Pods, hundreds, maybe thousands, and inside each one, something alien. Her chief of staff leaned close. Madam President, the public doesn't know a thing yet. If this leaks before we control the narrative. Monroe raised a hand. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen as one of the pods twitched, a skeletal hand pressing weakly against the glass. It's not the narrative I'm worried about. It's whether we survive long enough to have one. General Abrams, her Secretary of Defense, cleared his throat. With respect, Mom, my recommendation is immediate sterilization of the site. Thermobarics. Collapse the entire chamber and everything in it. A ripple of unease passed across the room. Monroe didn't answer right away. She'd been in office long enough to know fear-driven advice when she heard it. But this was different. Doctor, she said, turning to Dr. Alan Royce, the lead astrophysicist hastily flown in from Langley. Royce pushed up his glasses, his voice unsteady. Madam President, if we destroy the ship outright, we may trigger a failsafe. The entities inside might not even be the real threat. The ship itself is an intelligence. It reacted to our intrusion. It transmitted? Transmitted? Monroe repeated. He nodded. Deep space. Something's listening. Something's coming. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the projectors. Monroe clasped her hands to steady herself. So you're telling me we just rang a dinner bell? General Abrams slammed a fist on the table. All the more reason to act decisively. We bury that ship now. We might buy ourselves time. Or, Royce countered, we accelerate whatever this is. Mom, the ship isn't here by accident. It was buried deliberately. Someone, or something, put it here long before the first stone of Washington was laid. We could be standing on a prison, and if we collapse it, we might be the ones breaking it open. The words chilled the room. The president leaned back, staring at the American flag, pinned to the wall behind her generals. The symbol looked suddenly fragile. What did patriotism mean against forces that could swallow the earth whole? Her national security advisor leaned in. "Mom, if even a fraction of this gets out, you'll have panic in every city by sunrise. Riots. Collapse of faith in government. We can't let the people know what's under their feet." Monroe's eyes narrowed. "So you want me to lie to them?" Again, no one answered. She tapped the table slowly, weighing the impossible choice. Transparency versus survival. Defense versus diplomacy. Was it arrogance to believe humanity had a choice at all? "Where is Colonel Hale's team now?" she asked. The technician swallowed. "Still inside, Madam President. They've located the core chamber. But we've lost contact with one of the soldiers. His vitals are abnormal." "Abnormal how?" "His brain activity is off the charts, like he's been rewired." Monroe's jaw tightened. "Then the ship has already started turning my soldiers into what? Translators? Puppets?" Royce hesitated before answering. "It doesn't see us as separate, it's trying to integrate. Prepare." The president stood, pushing her chair back with a scrape that echoed through the tense room. "Gentlemen, ladies, listen carefully. The American people will not be told that their capital is sitting on top of a powder keg filled with alien corpses. Not yet. Not until we know whether those corpses are about to wake up." She fixed her gaze on Abrams. "General, prepare contingency strikes. I want warheads, drones, the whole arsenal ready on standby. But do not fire until I give the order. If this ship is what Royce says, one wrong move could doom us all." Abrams bristled but gave a curt nod. "Yes, Mum." Monroe turned back to the glowing feed, the pods flickering like ghostly lanterns in the dark. She could almost feel them breathing, waiting. "Dr. Royce," she said quietly, "if this ship is a prison, what happens if the jailer comes looking?" Royce's face paled. He didn't answer. The president stared at the screen a long time before whispering to herself, words no one else in the room dared echo. "God help us all." Colonel Hale's boots echoed through the cavernous chamber as he swept his rifle across the rows of pods. His team had stopped talking minutes ago. Silence had become survival instinct. The air was different now, charged, humming like a live wire underwater. Even without the instruments, Hale could feel it. The ship was awake. "Colonel," whispered Sergeant Vega, his voice trembling over comms. "They're moving." Hale froze. His visor lights caught the faintest ripple inside the translucent pods. Fingers curling, chests rising, lungs that hadn't breathed in, God knew how many centuries, now struggling for air. One pod near him shuddered violently. A crack split the surface. Pale liquid spilled out, pooling at his boots. He forced himself not to step back, not to run. "HQ, this is Hale," he said through clenched teeth. "We have pod breach. I repeat, they're waking up." Static answered. No response. The ship was cutting them off. Vega's rifle clicked nervously. "Sir, orders. Hold steady," Hale whispered. "We'll fire only if they make the first move." The first pod split with a wet, tearing sound. A figure spilled out, collapsing onto the black stone floor. It looked humanoid, too humanoid. Its skin was paper, white, stretched too thin over elongated bones. The face was almost human, but the eyes, huge, lidless, reflecting Hale's own terrified expression, watched him with something ancient, something knowing. Then the mouth opened. Not a scream, not a word, but a vibration, a low, resonant hum that rattled the chamber and set Hale's teeth on edge. His hottie scrambled, text flickering into nonsense. More pods cracked open in response. One by one, the humans that were not human stepped out, their movements jerky at first, then smooth, predatory. "Colonel," Vega whispered. "They're communicating." Hale realized with horror he was right. The vibrations were patterned. A language. The ship itself seemed to pulse in rhythm, amplifying the sound, translating thought into resonance. Suddenly, Hale's vision blurred. He staggered, clutching his helmet. His mind was filled with images not his own. Cities crumbling under burning stars, alien fleets blotting out stars, civilizations screaming in silence as they were erased. A war across galaxies, and then Earth. His own home. Washington, D.C. swallowed in fire. "No," he roared, shaking it off, slamming a fist into his helmet to clear the invasive visions. But Vega wasn't so strong. The sergeant dropped his weapon, eyes wide, tears streaming. "Sir, they're not the enemy," Vega whispered in a voice not entirely his own. "They're the future. They've chosen us." Hale's blood ran cold. The ship wasn't killing them. It was rewriting them. "Vega, listen to me. That's not your voice," Hale shouted, gripping the man's shoulders. But it was too late. Vega smiled, slow and alien, before walking calmly toward the creatures, arms open like a child running to a parent. The beings welcomed him with their cold hands. And then they stopped. All of them. Every pale figure froze in unison, their heads snapping toward Hale. The hum rose to a deafening pitch, vibrating straight into his skull. His vision blurred again. But this time, he didn't see cities burning. He saw a door. A door deep within the ship. It wanted him to open it. No, he whispered, gripping his rifle tighter. I'm not your puppet. But his legs trembled. Against his will, he felt himself taking a step forward. Far above, in the secure briefing room, President Monroe stared at the live feed, her knuckles white against the desk. Madam President, General Abrams barked, this is it. We lose Hale, we lose the city. Give me the order to strike. But Monroe didn't answer. She leaned closer to the screen, watching as the creatures closed in around Hale. Her heart pounded with the same question, now screaming in his own mind. If we destroy the ship, do we save humanity? Or unleash something worse? The feed crackled. Hale's voice broke through at last, ragged and strained. Madam President, if you can hear me, they're not prisoners. They're not survivors. They're wardens. And then the feed cut to black. Darkness swallowed Hale after the feed cut. His comms were dead, his rifle useless against the pressure in his skull. The ship was no longer just surrounding him. It was inside him, dragging him deeper into its will. His boots scuffed against the slick floor as he was pulled forward, toward the door he had seen in the visions. The creatures moved with him, silent now, their huge eyes fixed on him. Vega walked among them like he belonged, head tilted slightly as though listening to whispers only he could hear. Hale tried once, just once, to shout his name, to call him back. But no sound came from his throat. The ship had stolen even his voice. The door loomed ahead, oval, smooth, no seams. Hale braced himself, digging his boots into the ground, forcing every muscle to resist. For a heartbeat, he thought he'd won. Then the floor shifted beneath him, slickening, propelling him forward until his outstretched hand met the door. It dissolved at his touch. Inside was not another chamber, but a cavern of light. Symbols danced in the air like fireflies, patterns shifting into words his brain strained to translate. Not English, not human. But somehow his mind began to understand. You were not meant to find us. You were meant to inherit. Hale's jaw clenched. The voice wasn't heard through ears. It was carved directly into his thoughts, each word burning itself into the folds of his mind. What are you? His voice finally cracked through, hoarse, trembling. The symbols swirled, reconfiguring. Wardens, we were tasked to watch, to guard, to wait until the mark awoke. The mark? Hale asked, though dread pooled in his stomach. The symbols flared, filling the chamber with scenes. A planet torn apart by fire. Fleets of ships tearing across galaxies. Civilizations extinguished in the silence of space. He had seen fragments before, but now he saw the war in full, endless, ancient, merciless. And then Earth, but not destroyed. Preserved, encased in a shimmering barrier of energy, hidden in the dark like a jewel locked away. Earth was chosen as the vault. Humanity, your kind, were seated inside unaware. You were not free. You were the experiment. Hale's knees buckled. His hand hit the cold floor. No, he whispered. That's not possible. We evolved. We fought. We bled for everything we built. No one planted us. The symbols pulsed almost sorrowful. You grew as intended. You thrived within the walls of the vault. But the vault is failing. The war comes again. The enemy has returned. Behind him, Vega stepped closer, eyes glowing faintly now in the dim chamber. Do you see, sir? He said softly. We weren't chosen to fight. We were chosen to continue them. Hale's stomach turned. He saw it now. The wardens weren't alive in the way humans were. They were custodians waiting for centuries to pass until humanity matured enough to be told the truth. The truth that Earth had never been humanity's alone. Suddenly, alarms blared through Hale's comms, finally piercing the ship's grip. A frantic voice shouted over the static. Colonel Hale, come in! Alien craft entering Earth's orbit. Multiple signatures. Washington, D.C. is on lockdown. We're under attack. The creatures around Hale stiffened. Their heads lifted in unison, eyes flashing with cold fire. The symbols shifted one last time. The chain is broken. The vault is exposed. Choose quickly, or your kind will not survive the first strike. The chamber shook violently, dust raining from above as the ground trembled. Far above, in the White House, President Monroe watched satellite feeds of ships dropping from orbit, dark silhouettes against the stars. Madam President, General Abrams barked, those things aren't waiting. They're descending over every capital city. We need to strike first. Monroe's eyes were glued to the feed from the chamber. Hale stood frozen in the center, surrounded by pale figures, symbols burning into the air around him. And then, with grim clarity, Hale understood the ship hadn't just woken to reveal itself. It had woken because the war had already come. The vault was open. The enemy knew where Earth was, and humanity's survival depended on a choice he wasn't sure he was allowed to make. The night sky over Washington fractured like glass. From orbit, the ships descended, black silhouettes blotting out the stars. They weren't sleek, polished craft like in the movies. They were jagged, angular things that looked torn from some darker place in the universe. Each one pulsed with the same sickly red glow that Hale had seen in his visions. Panic erupted across the city. Sirens wailed. Fighter jets roared skyward in desperate defiance, their contrails streaking like white scratches against the alien shadows. Anti-aircraft guns lit up the skyline. Explosions thundered as missiles streaked upward, only to vanish against invisible shields that shimmered faintly with every impact. On the streets, civilians screamed as power grids failed. Lights flickered, then died, plunging neighborhoods into chaos. Cell networks collapsed under the overload. Washington was blind, deaf, and terrified. In the underground chamber, Hale braced against the trembling floor. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The wardens stood perfectly still, heads tilted toward the vibrations rolling through the earth. Then the ship itself moved. The chamber walls shifted, massive slabs of alien alloy sliding apart with the sound of grinding thunder. For the first time since its discovery, the ship revealed its true size, not just a buried relic, but a fortress buried beneath the capital. Columns of light shot upward, cutting through the ground like drills. In seconds, the National Mall cracked open. Monuments shuddered, trees toppled, and the earth split to reveal a glowing spine of alien metal rising toward the sky. The White House itself trembled on its foundations. President Monroe watched from the Situation Room, horror etched across her face. On the monitor, she saw the ship emerging like a titan, its hull gleaming with impossible geometry. "Dear God," someone whispered. General Abrams slammed his fist onto the table. "It's not a relic, it's a weapon. Madam President, we have to detonate now before it activates." But Monroe's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "No. Watch." The ship's lights pulsed in rhythm with the incoming alien fleet. For a moment, it seemed like a call, a signal. But then its energy flared brighter, locking onto the descending ships. In the chamber, Hale collapsed to one knee, his vision splitting with white fire as the ship poured images into his skull. This was never sanctuary. This was the blade left in the vault, the key, the defense. Above, the ship fired. Beams of searing blue light tore upward, cutting the night in half. The first alien craft exploded in silence, a blossom of fire stretching across the clouds. The second fractured into shards, raining molten metal into the Potomac. The third twisted apart midair, its carcass slamming into the outskirts of the city with a deafening quake. The crowd on the streets froze in disbelief. Cheers broke out amid the panic. For a moment, humanity saw hope in the thing they had feared. But the victory was short-lived. The alien fleet adjusted. Dozens more ships appeared over the horizon, blotting out the stars entirely. Their weapons lit up the sky, red lances striking the buried vessel, shaking Washington to its core. The Lincoln Memorial cracked and toppled. The Capitol dome split open, smoke billowing. In the Situation Room, Abrams turned to Monroe, face pale. "If this battle escalates, there won't be a Washington left, Madam President. This is the apocalypse on our doorstep." Monroe's hand trembled as she pressed it to her temple. "And if we destroy the ship, General, what then? We strip ourselves of the only defense we've ever had." Back in the chamber, Vega, his eyes glowing faintly now, turned to Hale with a strange calm. "It won't stop until you decide, sir. You have to tell it what to do." Hale's heart hammered. The ship was alive. A weapon, yes, but also something more. It wasn't fully in control. It was waiting, for him. For a human mind to guide it. "Why me?" he whispered through gritted teeth. The answer wasn't words, but the crushing certainty that filled his skull. Because humanity must choose to fight. The blade cannot swing itself. Above, the sky split with another blast as an alien strike hit the Washington Monument, shattering it into a rain of stone and dust. Hale staggered forward, staring at the writhing symbols in the chamber air, the pulsing core that begged for his command. If he accepted, humanity would be drawn into the galactic war the wardens had tried to contain. Billions of lives at stake. If he refused, Earth would burn tonight. His comms flickered alive, President Monroe's voice breaking through the static, taut with desperation. Colonel Hale, it's your call. Do we fight or do we fall? Colonel Hale stood at the heart of the ship, every breath scraping his lungs. The chamber around him pulsed like a living heart, symbols shifting in frantic rhythms. Outside, the earth shook as Washington crumbled under fire. The president's voice crackled through his comms. Hale, say something. He closed his eyes. All he could hear were the screams of his team, their terror when the pods opened, Vega's voice when the ship bent his will. And beneath it all, that low hum, a constant reminder this was bigger than him, bigger than Earth. Madam President, he said slowly, voice hoarse, if we take this power, there's no turning back. We won't just be defending Earth. We'll be part of their war. Monroe's silence stretched long enough for another explosion to rattle the chamber. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but heavy. Colonel, look outside. We're already in it. Through the fissures above, Hale saw fire raining down. Alien beams lanced across the Potomac, reducing bridges to molten steel. The Pentagon burned. The city's night sky had become a battlefield. Vega stepped closer, eyes still glowing, his voice eerily calm. It's not just a war, sir. It's survival. We are the next link in the chain. The wardens have chosen us. Hale turned, gripping his rifle until his knuckles went white. No, Vega. We don't let them choose for us. Humanity chooses for itself. He looked back at the symbols, the pulsing energy core waiting for his decision. His chest tightened. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a pact. Once he commanded it, humanity was bound to a war older than its own species. But what was the alternative? To let Earth burn tonight, to let billions die without lifting the blade already in his hand. His voice trembled as he whispered, damn you. Damn all of you for forcing this on us. And then he spoke the word. The chamber exploded with light. The ship roared to life, its core flaring brighter than the sun. Across Washington, citizens shielded their eyes as beams erupted from the ground, slicing through the night sky. Alien ships shattered like glass, one after another, fireballs streaking across the heavens. The tide turned in minutes. The fleet that had blotted out the stars was reduced to wreckage raining into the Atlantic. On the ground, soldiers and civilians alike stared in awe. Cheers mixed with sobs. Against the impossible, they had survived. But Hale didn't celebrate. As the final ship exploded above, the chamber dimmed, the symbols slowing their frantic swirl. One line burned into his mind before fading: the war is yours now. He staggered, clutching his helmet. The meaning was clear. The ship hadn't ended the threat, it had passed the torch. Humanity had fired its first shot in a war stretching across galaxies. Above, President Monroe stared at the monitors. Relief washed across her face, but so did dread. She knew what Hale knew: they hadn't escaped destiny. They had embraced it. Her voice came through the comms, softer now. Colonel Hale, you did what you had to do. History will remember this as the night humanity stood up. Hale looked at Vega. No longer just Vega, but something half human, half warden. His glowing eyes stared back, unreadable. History, Hale muttered, his voice hollow. Or the end of it. The chamber lights dimmed, but the hum remained, vibrating in the bones of the city itself. The ship wasn't going back to sleep. It was waiting, preparing. Outside, Washington smoldered. The monuments lay broken, the skyline scarred. Survivors stumbled through the streets, clutching one another, pointing at the wreckage in the sky. And somewhere in the silence between cheers and mourning, a truth hung heavy over all of them. The world had been saved tonight. But humanity's war had just begun.